Hi there, I'm John, and welcome to Edgetone Studios. Today, I'm not going to be talking about music or audio gear, or audio production, or audio components, or synthesizers, or anything of that nature. So if you're here for that, feel free to not watch. What I want to do is give an update on a video that I posted back in November, which brought a lot of subscribers to my channel. And that video was the fact that I had, at that time, just recently been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. And both with this month being Mental Health Awareness Month, May, um, and with the fact that I've had more updates since then and really didn't give a lot of details, I thought I would take some time to speak my mind on my own mental health, and I mean physically my brain failing me health, as well as mental health in general, and the story of sort of how I got to this point and where I'm at and what's going on and where I think I'm heading next with everything. I do plan to do more videos on gear and stuff in the future, so don't worry. It's not going to be a channel all about mental health now. So back almost this time last year, I had been out in my garden. I'd been weeding, and I'd bought this new weeder that you pull up with. So you'd plunge it in, you'd pull up a weed, and you'd pull the weed off and do it in. And I did that for a couple hours for a couple days, and I really hurt my shoulder. Like I'd pulled a muscle in here, and it was really bothering me. And that injury did not seem to be healing very quickly. It was lasting for weeks and weeks and weeks. So over the summer, I started noticing that when I was walking, my right arm was not swinging normally. It was not like my other arm was just swinging like it normally does when I walk. And this arm was kind of half moving, partially moving. And I started being a bit concerned about it, but wasn't too worried. I thought, oh, I just hurt my shoulder quite badly. And come early September 2022, I went for a walk on a Saturday, and my arm literally was not moving. I mean, I questioned whether or not I suddenly didn't have function. I grabbed my arm and moved it around and went, okay, it's still working, but it's not moving when I'm walking. It's not reflexively moving. So what the heck is going on? And my daughter came up to record one of our songs for our album that week. And she said, you better call your doctor right away, which I was planning to do, but, we were recording. So I booked an appointment. I got a phone consult that Thursday. Told him what was going on. He said, oh, okay, we'll maybe have to schedule you to come in. So between that time and the following Tuesday, my hand had been tightening up. I'd felt tightening in my fingers. My arm had been pulling and tightening. My shoulder was still sore, but now suddenly it was happening in my foot on the right side as well. So I was suddenly finding that, oh my God, my entire right side of my body's being affected. It eventually started pulling in my back. It was quite tight in there. And on that following Tuesday after my doctor's appointment, I was sitting in the studio right in this chair, working away on a mix and very focused. I'd been doing it for several hours. It was about 7 in the evening. And all of a sudden it felt like someone just took my world and spun it like this. And I'd just been twisted, and I went, holy crap, I'm dizzy. This is not good. There's something really wrong with me. And I went to my wife, Tracy, and said, take me to the hospital right now. I got to go to emergency. Let's find out what the fuck's going on. So we went to emergency, and thankfully the Duncan Hospital is not huge and was not crazily busy because we're in a health crisis here in terms of doctor shortages and capacity issues. But I got in quickly. They were fantastic. They took my case very seriously. They scanned my brain with a CT scan, and they said, as far as we can see, there's nothing wrong. Your blood pressure's great. Your heart rate is fine. There's no signs of elevated stress. So call your doctor tomorrow and get some finalized results of these scans. So the next day I tried to call my doctor, and of course he wasn't available that day. But come the Friday, I finally got in touch with him, and he said, based on the symptoms, immediately go to Victoria, immediately go to emergency and tell them what's going on. And the tension and stretching and pulling in my fingers and the little bit of twitching that was just starting was going on even more severely now. So again, I went to the hospital. This time I had another CT scan and got full results. And again, everything was looking fine, but they now scheduled me to see a neurologist. So within 2 weeks, I was at a neurologist's office. This is my primary neurologist. He was a stroke specialist, but he's a neurologist. He knows about brain health. He looked at everything going on and he said, I'm sending you for an MRI. I'm sending you for another CT scan. We're going to get more blood work done up. So we got that done. And on coming back from that and meeting him again, he said, your brain looks healthy. Everything looks good. This is very concerning, especially the rapidity that it progressed, how quickly it went from nothing to suddenly your whole right side of your body's affected. And by this time, the tightening and the pulling and that had gotten pretty severe. And I was starting to feel a bit on my left side too. So a little bit in these fingers. It never really fully transpired. A little bit in my arm here. A little bit in my shoulder. My neck was getting a lot more tense. I was getting sensations of a pulling at the back of my head, like something was gripping my skin and pulling, and almost like a nausea, like a headache. That you get when you're sick and vomiting, that swirliness in your head that was starting to go on pretty constantly. So he sent me next to another neurologist for nerve conductivity testing, and I found out later that the reason they were doing nerve conductivity testing was to find out if this was ALS. And at the end of that testing and a bunch more, probing of my arm and making me move my limbs in certain ways and see the weird kind of jitteriness that was going on and the reactions that were happening. This secondary neurologist said, well, I know what you've got. You've got Parkinson's disease. And that's when I came on the channel and told everybody, mainly to kind of let my friends and family know, and people who knew me. I posted on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook that short video, and that drove some 25,000 people to watch my video and on this YouTube channel, and grew my channel somewhat. And then suddenly I went, I guess I have some people who are actually watching what I'm doing now. So I've got some content, which was sort of a benefit of my mental health issue. Anyways, long and the short of it was, he prescribed, I think it's called Cinemex. No, what's it called? I can't remember the primary name, but it's levodopa carbidopa, which is the standard treatment for Parkinson's. I immediately felt some lightening of the tension and the pulling, and there wasn't really pain, but uncomfort that I was having from that. And as I was going through the first couple weeks of being on the levodopa and waiting for a follow-up appointment with my neurologist, I started, I had quite a few severe symptoms. I was getting headaches. I was getting twitching in my face that wasn't happening before. These are all symptoms that were listed on the drug itself. And before I knew it, I was thinking, I can't tell the difference between whether my symptoms are still getting worse or whether the drugs are making me feel worse. So I decided to wean myself off for a bit and see what happened, because the drug itself doesn't fix anything. It just makes you feel more comfortable and gives you some more mobility. It doesn't in any way slow down Parkinson's. It doesn't in any way heal you. It simply makes things more bearable as long as you can put up with the side effects. And I wasn't liking the side effects, so I decided I was going to go off the drug. About the time I was almost off the drug, I finally got into my primary neurologist. He examined me again, and as my wife likes to joke, his main comment was, which you kind of don't want to hear from a doctor. It's like, what's going on? So he said, well, I see that this other doctor is, I won't name names, has said you've got Parkinson's, but I'm not so sure it's Parkinson's because what I'm seeing is spasticity. And spasticity, he described to me as basically like when I go to move my muscle one direction, it reflexively tries to pull back the other direction, which is pretty well what it feels like, as well as the fact that I was getting this tightening. But most of my symptoms match Parkinson's. So it was like, well, it sounds like I've got Parkinson's, but he's not entirely sure. I told him I was going off the drugs. He said, that's fine. If you need to go back on them, go back on them. We'll see you in a few months. So over the next 10 days, as I was off the levodopa, the tension and the tightening and the pulling just got worse and worse and worse each day until it was so unbearable. I was like, fuck, I'm just taking these drugs again. Forget the side effects. That's it. So I went back on the drugs and eventually started getting used to the constant. I have to take them several times a day. I'd get a boost of dopamine, but also sort of a headache. I'd get this swirly pulling feeling. Some days it would be worse. Some days my arm wouldn't move at all. Some days it was moving fine. All very typical of a Parkinson's diagnosis. And come January, I saw him again for a follow-up to see how things were going. I told him I was back on the drugs. He did his examination. We talked about how things were going. It seemed like even though I was now swimming regularly, then I'd switched to running regularly. I started playing drums as a therapy for Parkinson's because rhythmic activity like drumming, shadow boxing, dancing are all great ways to minimize the decay or decline that you're going to have in your system. And he did the examination again and said, you still don't have any loss of strength. I'm still seeing spasticity. I'm still not convinced this is Parkinson's disease. So in my mind, that was great news because what it probably meant was that I had a viral infection. And yes, I did have COVID over the summer, but the symptoms started before I had COVID. So and that this might be an event-based thing where a virus has damaged my brain and it's giving me Parkinson's-like symptoms on one side of my body, and that maybe I'll heal from it, maybe I'll just stay this bad. So that was is still, I guess, to some extent, a bit of a ray of hope, or at least an idea that makes it that daily I'm not thinking, oh, how long do I have before it's so bad that I can't do X? Because that's where your mind ends up going when you've got a degenerative brain disease that, is incurable, at least unlikely to be cured in your lifetime. So that continued on. And as the next few months, it was just 3 more months before I went back to see him again, he sent me for another brain scan this time. And just to back up, by this point in time, I'd had 3 CT scans, 1 with contrast, 2 brain scans of MRIs. One was my spine and my lower neck, and the other one was my brain and neck. And again, nothing showing on either of these. So he sent me for another brain scan with contrast, and then we were looking at doing a lumbar puncture if we didn't see anything from that, because lumbar puncture could show potentially things like an autoimmune disease, apparently, or signs of a infection that had affected my spinal cord, or spinal, I guess my nerves in my spine, something to that effect. Not that I know, I'm not a doctor, but this is what I gleaned from asking lots of questions. So that's what I was up to last week. Was going in for the lumbar puncture and a follow-up to see what had happened with the brain scan. And while I was waiting to get to that appointment, I got a call from the Parkinson's specialist because I'd been on the wait list for seeing the Parkinson's neurologist who specializes in Parkinson's in Victoria. And I was told that was a 10-month wait list, and suddenly they had an opening. It had only been 5 months, and they could see me the same day. So last Wednesday, I went in to see my neurologist in the morning. The plan was to discuss the brain scan results, get a lumbar puncture, And then if I was feeling up to it, go to the Parkinson's doctor appointment in the afternoon because I might not be feeling too well after having my spine punctured. Uh, um, as we were discussing it, we decided that it didn't make a lot of sense to bother with the lumbar puncture in the morning because I was going to be getting a second opinion in the afternoon. We had another examination, and I was telling him that, pretty well I was stable. I had days when things are worse, days when things are better. I've had days where I felt almost completely free of symptoms, and then days where it's just my arms just seized right up. And he did his examination again, and he said, you know what? I'm pretty convinced this is not Parkinson's, and I'm pretty sure that the Parkinson's specialist will agree with me. But we'll see how that goes. So that was great news, in my opinion. And come the afternoon, so I had to wait around the rest of the day. Come the afternoon, I finally get in to see the Parkinson's specialist. I tell him all the history of what's going on in a much more condensed form because, he's a doctor and he's busy and they don't really take tons and tons of time for individual patients. But he did take 25 minutes or so to listen to what was going on, did a physical examination, and then said, I agree with the other doctor that you do have Parkinson's. I'm pretty convinced you do. And I said, well, okay, that's weird because it's only on one side of my body. Is that normal? Or does that sometimes happen with Parkinson's? And apparently, yes. It came on suddenly and rapidly from nothing to full side of my body affected in 3 months. And that seems unusual. And he said, that could happen. He said, I could be wrong, but I don't think I'm wrong. So this is where I'm left now, is with a condition where, even currently, one of the things I recently tried to do was see if I could finally start learning how to slap bass, because I've been a traditional finger picker on bass. And I find that if I try and do this motion, I can't control it well enough. I can't whap in rhythm with that hand. This hand, fine. I can just whap away. This other side of my body, no. So the condition stays. But what I talked to both of them about at that time was I'm thinking of going off the drugs again, because the last time I went off the drugs, my symptoms were getting worse and worse and worse, pretty well by the day, but at least by the week. And I was concerned at that time that with the rapidity of the progression, maybe I wouldn't be walking in a year, like it was coming on so quickly. However, it's stabilized over the spring. And as I said, it's some days been even quite light. So I've gone back off the drugs. I was told I could just drop them. You don't have to wean yourself, just go off them. And in general, I feel about the same, except that I don't have the symptoms of headache and a kind of a nauseous sort of drug feeling going on. However, the drugs do provide dopamine, and they do give me a bit more control over the spasticity of my movements. And currently, they're reasonably severe at the moment. Like I can't really even turn my wrist without a big shaking going on. But this is where I sit now with this big unknown question, still this thing looming over me that I may be slowly degenerating or quickly degenerating over the next few years to lose more and more of my motor function because a part of my brain has died and the cells are dead and they'll never come back. Or I may have some dead cells and damage from a virus that may or may not ever heal either, but maybe doesn't get any worse. And those are the two potential futures. So I guess that's the story. That's where I'm at, if that's of interest. But the other thing I was thinking a lot about during this process, because after I did my video on just announcing that I just got diagnosed with a brain disorder, besides the fact that it sparked an idea for a song that I wrote a couple days later that I think turned out pretty good, and I'll probably put it on my solo album I'm going to put out after I finish my album with Waveform Mountain. Other than that, it really sparked my thoughts about why did so many people reach out to me, not just with words of comfort, because a lot of people did. But I literally had people reaching out to me and saying, wow, what a wonderful thing you've done by telling people what's going on with you and being vulnerable on YouTube. And yeah, I get that it's kind of hard to be vulnerable on YouTube, but for me, it was just a feeling of I had to do this. I don't know why. I just felt I had to do it. And I thought a lot about the positive comments people were giving me about basically saying it takes a lot of courage to do something like that. Whereas I didn't feel like I was being courageous. I just felt like I was doing something I needed to do. I put a lot of thought into what is it about the way I approach things that gives me a healthy perspective on how to move forward with difficult situations. Because really, that's all this is. This is the same as I've got a bunch of nice stuff and it burned in a fire. I have a friend who died of cancer. My mom passed away. Changes that go on in life that change the direction of your perceived future, because we all sort of imagine a future where, for example, I built a studio. I imagine a future where for the next 10 years or so, I produce music. I work with cool bands. I get to meet interesting people. I get to do all sorts of creative things. And that future is a likely possibility because I've set myself up to do that. But it's in no way a guarantee. It's never been a guarantee. But in my mind, I've set it up like, oh, that's my future. That's what's going to happen. And when something comes along to disrupt that, such as being diagnosed with a degenerative brain disorder that's going to fuck up your body and already has fucked up your body, it can change the way you approach everything. And for a little bit, it really drastically changed my viewpoint on my future. What it really did is made me hyper aware of how short and fleeting my potential future opportunities might be, and how much I really wanted to get on with them now and not miss out. At the same time, it set up an idea in my head that I don't know what my future is going to be. I might not achieve any of the things I want to do. And I have to be able to sit back and relax and take it easy and take care of myself and not be pressured by the idea that I have to achieve something when sometimes I just might need to go lie down because I don't feel well. So I'm not quite sure where I was going with this, other than I recognize there was something in myself that I've been developing my entire life around my approach to looking at change and loss and grieving and dealing with uncomfortable situations that life brings at you or throws at you. And we all have them. For each of you, it's something different. You've all had your life experiences you go through, and you try and find a way to deal with it. And sometimes you do it well, and sometimes you do it poorly. And I've been the same. However, I feel like there's something very strong and vital in sharing that it's possible for things to be crap and for you to still have a viewpoint of, but that's okay, because that's the way the world is. The world is the way it proceeds, and it becomes what it becomes. We can have a global climate crisis and still love being alive and enjoy life, and not have to take on the weight of everything that our awareness of being human and being the ones who caused it can do to us. It's possible just to set your mind to being okay with things being how they are, with being sad about what's sad, but with being frustrated with what's frustrating, but not allowing that sadness or that frustration to stop you from taking care of yourself, from approaching your future like something that is possible as opposed to something that has been destroyed. And that's my approach now, is my future isn't destroyed. It just changed. It became something different than I was expecting. I fucking didn't want it. I really did not want this, but I'm okay with it, right? It's just what it is. I'm figuring out day to day what it means to go to bed feeling my neurological disorder affecting my body and wake up feeling my neurological disorder affecting my body, and spend my entire day noticing how weird my body feels, and when I'm noticing that I managed to have a period of time where I was distracted and doing things and just enjoying things without going, oh shit, my arm's screwed up, my leg's screwed up. So I guess to summarize and wrap up this rambling, very personal, very self-centered video on what I'm about and what is happening to me, I'd just like to say a word of encouragement to anybody out there who's going through anything difficult, that you can get through it. And I'm sorry it's happening to you if it is, but there's a way to get through it, and you just have to take a next step and see where your future leads. But try as hard as you can to not hold on to everything that you think you need to hold on to. Allow things to change to become what they're going to become. Whatever the loss that you're going through is, whether it's financial, whether it's with stuff, whether it's with people, whether it's with whether it's with animals, pets, all those types of changes are going to go on. And now I feel really self-centered about, self-conscious about this video, but I'll still post it. So thank you for listening. I hope that you're able to keep your own mental health as strong as it can be. This will probably be my last post about mental health and Parkinson's and or weird viral Parkinsonian-like symptoms, unless something drastically changes for me, such as something goes really wrong or something goes really right. I might give an update, but I think I'm done with publicly talking about this. And thank you for listening. And thanks for checking out my channel. And there's going to be some cool stuff coming from Waveform Mountain, where our album's coming out within a few months. We're almost wrapped up. So I'm looking forward to that. Okay, cheers. See ya.